welcome to Behavioral Grooves. My name is Kurt Nelson.
And I'm Tim Houlihan. We have conversations with guests that help us understand and gain insights into why do we do what we do. Then we explore how we can apply those insights to work and life. In this episode, we get a perspective that comes from the founder of a nonprofit.
So, Tim, you seem like a volunteering kind of guy.
Yeah, I am.
Have you had a recent volunteering experience that you'd like to share with us?
Yeah, I have.
Tell us about it.
So there's a local organization called Feed My Starving Children that does a great job of orienting their volunteers. And they get between 60 and 100 volunteers every day, twice a day. So they get bunches and bunches of people coming through. And they do two things that are really great. The first thing is that they connect everyone to the mission. So they sit you down and they show you a video of connecting the work that you're going to be doing today to the people who are going to be on the receiving end.
Wow.
And it's about food. So, and it's live and it's this video experience. It's beautiful. And so you see the kids that are receiving the food that you're going to be preparing. And then the second thing is that they show you a video on how to do the jobs that you're going to be doing. So everybody feels comfortable walking into the workroom because there's a whole bunch of different tasks, and they've just shown you a video to get you comfortable with these are the things that I'm going to be doing. And so that makes me feel, especially as a first time or an early volunteer, I don't have to worry so much because they're there to take care of me. And then there's people walking the floor and coaching. But it makes a big difference to have a good opening experience in any volunteer situation.
So they provided you with insight of the why and how to help you really feel acclimated to the volunteering experience that you were doing.
Absolutely, both why and how.
So our conversation today with Terry Esau explores how he accidentally applies many behavioral science insights into his nonprofit, Free Bikes for Kids, including, Tim, how he treats his volunteers and how he gets them excited about doing that work.
Which is really cool. Terry is more complex than just a guy who founded this incredible nonprofit. He's also an author and a speaker, but he has spent most of his career composing music for documentary films, television, and radio ads.
You have no connection with him at all, did you?
And this was so much fun to talk to him. He composed the music for more than 2,000 TV commercials for clients including Target, McDonald's, Pepsi, Harley Davidson, Honda, Subway, Golden Grams, and even kitty litter. How about that? He's even won a Clio Award for his work in advertising. So He's pretty terrific.
So hop on your bike and go out and volunteer while you listen to our very interesting accidental behavioral scientist interview with Terry Esau.
Terry Esau, welcome to the Behavioral Groove Studios.
Hi, it's great to be here with you guys.
It's good to have you. Good to have you. Kurt, shall we start with the speed round?
Let's start with a speed round. All right, so Terry, life without a mobile phone or life without a laptop? Which would you have to pick?
That's a hard one. I'd probably say without a laptop.
Okay.
It's pretty tough to live without a mobile phone these days.
Isn't it crazy? I mean, 10, 20 years ago, we didn't,
I would just have them. I would have really sore thumbs if I didn't have
a laptop.
Or I would just use dictation and have to correct the auto dictation constantly.
There you go.
Because it never gets it right.
Up the mountain or down the mountain?
Now, I'm a cyclist, so when I hear that, I'm thinking riding a bike.
Okay.
I do like going up, but going down is way more fun. Because I've actually almost hit 60 miles per hour going down a mountain on my bike.
Wow.
So, passing cars.
Wow.
It's awesome.
And that's not when you're drafting, right? I mean, I've heard what was 186 miles an hour.
83 was the world record that just got broken.
This was not on the salt flats.
Wow.
All right. Travel with a set itinerary or no itinerary?
No itinerary.
All right. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. And then have to ask, unicycle or bicycle?
Bicycle.
Okay. He just laughs.
We get unicycles donated to us every year, and I actually took one home and tried it in the basement a little bit, but I go, I'm going to smack my head completely open if I keep doing this. Do you guys ride a unicycle?
I do not, but my daughter just got into it. She bought a unicycle with her own money. She is 9 years old, and she goes to a friend of hers, they go to a unicycle club, and she's all into it. Now it's winter in Minnesota, so she bought it right at the beginning of winter, and so now she has
not a lot of unicycling outside in these.
No, not much. No. So anyway, there we go. Go ahead.
I was going to say, I call my bicycle my carbon fiber therapist. So she serves multiple purposes with me.
And that's an all year round thing for you.
She takes care of me mentally and physically. So.
And do you bike year round regardless of weather?
I do. I don't bike as much in winter. I was just out on my fat bike yesterday. And it's fun, but I love warm weather and just cruising on it.
Well, and this winter, the snow hasn't been as bad. So there are more bicyclists out in Minneapolis than oftentimes in the winter. But I love the people with their fat bikes. They got their glove, the hand warmers. They got their goggles on. They got everything. And they're riding in the worst weather ever. And I just give them kudos because I'm going, no, that's an awful lot of work for me.
Yeah.
But I give them kudos. I mean, good for them.
It's fun. They're slow.
Their therapist.
They're heavy. They're slow.
They're slow.
I like fast bikes.
Fat bikes are crazy.
Hence the carbon fiber therapist, not a aluminum therapist.
You got it. Or steel therapist.
Steel. There you go. Going way back in the day.
Too much iron.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, definitely.
Slows you down.
So Terry, you founded an organization that we have to talk about here, and that is Bikes for Kids.
Free bikes for kids.
Free bikes for kids. Thank you. Can you tell us a little bit about what was it that got you interested in this whole idea of making sure that kids got bikes for free?
Well, I call myself a bikeaholic. So, and I think of that as a positive term.
It's better than many of the other aholics that we could think of, right?
It's a semi-healthy addiction.
Okay.
And I'm not trying to kick it.
Okay.
But like when I was 12 years old or whatever, I don't remember, I got a paper route because I got paid to ride my bike. And then my brother and I would build these ramps, and we'd collect neighborhood kids and make them lie down in the street, and we'd see how many kids we could jump over with our bikes. And we almost always made it.
Almost. Any listeners, we don't recommend you try this at home.
Yeah, right.
Don't try this at home.
Our parents didn't recommend it either. I think after my brother missed once, that was the end. But then when I was 16, the day that school let out in spring, my buddy and I got on our bikes and we rode to the West Coast and back, which still blows me away that my parents would let me do that at 16 years old.
I think it's pretty amazing you did that in one day, too.
Yeah, right. And then, I kind of walked away from the bicycle. My bike was stolen during college, and then I didn't get another bike for a while. And then I realized that guitars were much better for attracting chicks in college. So I said, screw the bike. Let's focus on the guitar here.
There you go.
But then I came back to the bicycle, a little bit later, and then I started racing on my bike, and I started Free Bikes for Kids simply because I looked around and saw all of my friends had bikes in their garages that were collecting dust, usually kids' bikes that their kids had outgrown.
And you had like a little bicycling club, right?
Yeah,
You kind of met every Saturday. So it was a group of people that you were familiar with their bikes and everything else. Okay.
Yeah. So I had a cycling club that meets in my driveway on Saturday mornings. And I actually got a call one day saying, hey, we know this family. And it was the beginning of December. Christmas is coming. This family couldn't afford to buy a present for the kids. So they said, hey, Terry, does one of your friends have a bike? I called, and it's like literally almost all of them had a bike they could donate. And so I called up Care 11, which I had done all of their news theme music for.
Which is the local NBC affiliate in Minneapolis.
Right. and I had done all of their news themes I did it for like 30 years.
Which we will get to in a little while.
We will? Okay.
Yes.
And I just said, can I come on and invite people to donate your bikes to me and my cycling buddies? We're going to fix them up and give them away to kids for Christmas. And they go, sure. So in 2 weeks, we got 250 bikes. We fixed them up, gave them away. My friends all said, that was fun. Let's do it next year. And we gave away about 750. And my friend said, that's fun. Let's do it again next year. And we gave away about 1,500. And I said, okay, guys, this is fun, but this is a lot of work. How about if we form a nonprofit? Let's get a board. I'll go find some corporate sponsorship. We did that, and then that year we gave away 5,000 bikes.
And today, you guys have locations not just in Minneapolis, but across the country, right?
So we're in 8 cities right now. We've given away 60,000 bikes. Wow. We hold the Guinness World Record for most bikes collected in one day, which the record says was 5,512. But then the following year, we collected almost 10,000 in one day. But we figured we already owned the record, so why spend the money to set another one?
I just have to call attention to the fact that there is a record about collecting bikes in one day.
Yeah.
There is a record about everything.
Yeah, right. Have you seen the size of those books?
Yeah. I guess enough said, right?
And just this is a slam to the Guinness World Record, which is located in the UK. Mm-hmm. The minimum cost to set a world record is $8,000. So
you're basically, the record setters are paying for the production of the book. Basically.
Yes, that's exactly right.
Okay,
which is another reason why we didn't decide to spend the money to break our own record.
Yeah.
If somebody breaks it, we may. I mean, the marketing that came out of that was good for us, and it got us some good publicity and stuff. So, was it worth $8,000? Maybe. I don't know.
So that was a big jump to collect 5,000.
Yes,
that year.
Yeah.
And how did you do it? It takes a lot of human power, right? You've got to have a lot of people and space and coordination. Yeah, our model is very different than most models that do what we do. In fact, I looked at it and said, most models that are collecting, refurbishing, giving away bikes are very inefficient. They do it year-round. They have to have space year-round. They have to have staff year-round, recruit volunteers year-round. So we collect one day a year in each city, and then we refurbish for 8 weeks. Then we give away over the course of a weekend or a little more, and we shut it down. What was the question again?
How do you process? How do you do it? How do you get it?
Yeah, so what we found is if people have to drive more than 10 minutes to donate a bike, they probably won't do it.
Is this through extensive research? Or
we're just
keen
looking,
observation.
Every year we look at what happened and we look at best practices and we go, how do we tweak our model? And we went through the Kaizen method of lean manufacturing to help perfect the efficiency and the whole model that way too. Mm-hmm. But so like here in Minneapolis, St. Paul, we have little over 50 collection points. And, so nobody has to drive more than 10 minutes to donate a bike. And we get a lot of publicity for it. So a lot of people know about it. It's not hard to get people to donate bikes if they know about it and if it's convenient. And then we had 54 trucks that drove a loop. They each had 3 sites, I think, that they had to pick up from. And they start donating bikes at 9 a.m. and they're done at 1. And by about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, 8,000 bikes have been picked up, have been donated, picked up, delivered, triaged and placed into one of our 15 categories in a warehouse that we get someone to donate for free, because we've never paid for space, and we've had like 130,000 square foot warehouses that have been donated for free because we only need them for 2.5 months.
Right, but I would think you need a lot of space to process 7,000 or 8,000 bikes over the course of a few weeks.
And so I have a couple questions. One is the triage process. So walk us through what that triage process is. And you said you had 15 different categories, and you don't need to get into all 15. Right. Talk about what
the
what
triage,
they kind of
are. Some listeners, maybe I shouldn't be saying this online, but every bike that is donated is not refurbished and given away. Some bikes that we get are
Beyond repair.
total rust buckets, and somebody is looking at us as a garbage removal service, I guess.
And sort of that's okay, right? I mean, you accept that as part of in the bigger scheme of things.
One year we tried to do a thing where when people brought one of those to a donations point, we asked them to say, you know what, we can't fix this bike. And we had people who were really offended by that.
Yeah.
And so we said, forget that. We take every bike, we say, thank you very much. You get a tax receipt. You know, you can claim whatever you think the value of that bike was and deduct it from your taxes. But yeah, you asked about triaging. What we do is when the bike arrives at the warehouse, we have what we call our bike captains who have been trained in the process. And it takes about 15 seconds to triage a bike and determine, are we going to fix this bike or not?
Wow.
15 seconds?
Yeah, so they pick it up, they drop it on the cement. Does anything fall off?
Clue number one.
Yeah.
Something falls off.
Not so good.
Goes over here.
All right.
I mean, is it rusty? They spin both wheels. Are the wheels good, or are we going to have to put new wheels on this thing?
Right.
We don't do anything with tires because we replace a lot of tires and tubes. We look at the derailleurs shifting if it has it, and go, is this rusted solid? Is it movable? Is it fixable? And so it's just real basic things. We check the brakes, and we go. We kind of look at it and go, can this bike be cleaned, prepped, and repaired in 2 hours, 2.5 hours max?
Okay.
If it's going to take longer than that, we're going, this bike is better serving as an organ donor. We take parts off it to fix other bikes. So if it costs too much or if it takes too much time, it becomes a donor.
Right.
Okay.
And we save tens of thousands of dollars in parts costs by stealing parts from other bikes. Yeah. So it all works.
Yeah.
Are you ever in a situation where you don't have enough parts?
Well, we purchase parts.
You do.
We also have QBP, Quality Bike Products, which is located here. They're probably the largest bike part supplier to bike shops in the country. And the CEO, Steve Flagg, was on our board for a while, and they give us $10,000 to $12,000 of free parts at cost every year.
Wow.
That's terrific.
So a lot of the new parts come from there. And then we do have to purchase tires and tubes and stuff like that too.
Okay. Are you ever afraid that you're going to run out of bikes that people give? We've talked about this before, so tell this. Yeah.
We've looked at the sustainability aspect of it. Now I can't remember what the number is. I think it's between 20 and 25 million bikes are sold in the U.S. every year.
Wow.
A third of those are 20-inch wheel size or smaller.
Which is the kid bikes that you're looking at.
So this is like a first grader on down almost, maybe second grader.
Okay.
Let's say that's 7 or 8 million bikes that are sold each year that are probably going to be outgrown in another year or two. And that doesn't even take into account all the bikes that are already out there sitting in garages. So I think the sustainability aspect of it is I will never run out of bikes.
You'll never run out of people saying, we have Sally's bike in the garage that's been sitting there for 4 years and hasn't been ridden once. Yeah. And we would love to.
The only thing that would
used.
kill our program is if people stopped having babies.
Oh, doggone it.
Don't think that's going to happen.
I'm pretty sure that's a safe bet.
That's a pretty safe bet.
So once the bikes are triaged,
yes.
Now you've got how many weeks between?
8 weeks.
You've got 8 weeks between pickup day and delivery day.
Right.
Of giveaway day.
Right.
So how many volunteers do you have to have in the warehouse working on these bikes? How many hours get put in to get them all fixed up?
I can tell you, it's close to 20,000 volunteer hours.
In 8 weeks.
In 8 weeks, yeah. And probably 3,000 to 4,000 unique volunteers.
Wow.
So now we get a lot of volunteers who volunteer one time and they come back. So we don't necessarily track all of that information, but we do track how many unique volunteers we get.
Yeah.
So, and that's just here in Minneapolis, St. Paul. So now we have this going in 8 other cities too. So I think I actually just did the figures for 2018. So we were over 30,000 volunteer hours if you combine all of our cities. A lot of the other cities are all much newer, so they're just getting started. So they're in year 1 or year 2. So they're collecting 500 bikes or 1,000 or 1,500 bikes.
Not nearly to the scale that you have gotten over the years. Because you started this in 2008. So this has been 10 years in Minneapolis and kind of growing from there. Now, do you get a lot of volunteers from corporations? Do they come in and say, hey, we have a community service day and we're going to bring in 50 people or various different, and Alina's one of your keynote sponsors. Do they bring people in?
Yep. Alina gives us a lot of volunteers, but we actually, corporate volunteer groups make up almost 50% of our volunteer force.
Wow. 50%.
So 50%. And we know that we need those groups.
Yeah.
Can you use skilled and unskilled labor? Absolutely.
So we divide our process into 3. It's cleaners, preppers, and mechanics. Cleaners, we've designed a volunteer registration system on our website. So you go on and it asks you a question. Have you ever changed a tire? If you say no, it says, congratulations, you're a cleaner. and it shoots in a video to them that shows them how we clean bikes.
Have you ever changed a bike tire or tube?
Here. If you say yes to that, then it takes you to a second question. Have you ever adjusted a derailleur or changed a bottom bracket? If you say no, it says, congrats, you're a prepper, which means you're going to change tires and tubes. You're going to put on new pedals, new grips, maybe a new saddle or a saddle that we steal from another bike, take off reflectors that are broken. So it's not highly mechanical skill, but a little bit.
Right.
So, and if you say yes to that question, it says, congrats, you're a mechanic. And again, they get a video automatically sent to them that shows them exactly what they're going to do when they get to our warehouse.
Right.
Which is part of, what we learned through Kaizen and some of that stuff.
It's a wonderfully simple triage component for your volunteers on the website. I mean, just looking at it and using it, and what a great way of being able to allow people to have that element where you're feeling positive about what you're doing, even if you can't be a mechanic. You're still helping, and you're not shaming anybody by saying,
let's do a test.
Here we go.
Yeah.
Oh, wait, you guys are over here.
You
guys
suck.
It's a wonderful way of thinking about doing that, kind of simple and positive.
When you think about it, our program lives or dies with our volunteers.
Yeah. So
we have worked really hard to go, how do we create the best volunteer experience possible? And so it's like we come in and we help them. In fact, we've talked about having some people from the Guthrie come in and work with our host to train them how to tell the story, so that when people come in, we tell this compelling story to them and we make them understand that you're not just cleaning or fixing a bike. You're changing the life of this kid who's never had a bike. You're putting a smile on their face. You're helping them to stay healthy. All this stuff. So we take a lot of pride in how do we create the best volunteer experience, so when people leave, they go, that was awesome. I want to come back.
Well, tell us about that story, because in our last time that we talked, you're talking about, it's this ticket to the world. These bikes, the kids that are getting these bikes are not the run-and-mill mom and pop in a suburban, with 2 cars and a nice house. These are kids who have a big need for it, and this might be the first real thing that they ever have as theirs, right?
Yeah.
It's freedom too, right?
Right. Well, I always say that the bike is the most important thing a kid owns between a teddy bear and a car.
Okay.
Where it's a big deal, because, like you said, it's their first ticket to freedom. It's a lot of times it's the first chance where they start to go explore outside of their immediate neighborhood. It's maybe a chance to get to after-school activities that they wouldn't be able to. A lot of these kids, they might have a single-parent family. That person, the mom or dad, is off working. They can't get them to these after-school things, and it could be sports, it could be music, it could be theater, it could be all that kind of stuff. So it opens that up, and that also opens them up to mentorship. So they have a coach, they have a director, they have, this is an experience now that brings them into contact with somebody who could potentially be a mentor for that kid.
And change their lives.
So it changes it that way. It gets these kids away from, screen time. Mm-hmm. So it now proactively makes them healthy. And we know that an active kid does better in school. That's cognitively, it helps your brain to focus. So there's so many aspects of it. And we believe that the diversity and equity aspect of cycling has been a little skewed, and so we actually want to broaden people who are on bikes and say, this is something that is for everybody.
Right.
Let's rewind just a little bit. Go back to, so we've been through the process of collecting the bikes, of repairing and preparing the bikes for giveaway day. Let's go back to giveaway day. You use some what I think is a really cool behavioral science twist on how you give the bikes away. So could you tell the listeners about how you present the kids with bikes and how that process works?
Okay, if I'm not getting to what you're actually asking here, let me know. So the main way that we give away bikes. So we decided very early on. I'll just tell you a little story. I think it was our first year. We didn't really know what we were doing, So
kind of like Tim and me every day.
Yeah. I'm not so sure I still know, but this was a small thing, 250 bikes. We put an ad in the local paper in the suburb on the west side of Minneapolis where I live and said, hey, if you've had a tough year financially, you can't afford to give your kid a present, come on down. We'll give them a bike.
Okay.
Well, this lady showed up in a mink coat and she goes, this is fantastic because every year we have to schlep our bikes up to the cabin. Now we can just have bikes there and here.
Yeah.
And I gave her a couple of beats to think and said, that's not what we're doing here. Yeah. And she was like, oh, the lights went on and she kind of tail between her legs and walked out the door.
Oh, gosh.
So what we decided very soon after that is it's a tricky thing to be in the business of vetting people, to decide, do you deserve to have a free bike?
Right.
And I said, we don't want to be in that role. What we need to do is we need to invite organizations, whether it's a CBO or FBO or schools that are already working with low-income families. Let's invite them to apply to become a benefiting partner of ours. So every year we get, 150 organizations that apply. We take about 100 of them locally. And then we vet them. So we go, are you doing a good job? Are you keeping the dignity of people intact? So we go, we literally vet them. And then when we go, this is an organization we want to work with, then we say, okay, now you have to, or they say, we need we say, how many bikes do you need? And they might say 500. And we say, we're spreading this around. We'll give you 200.
Right.
Now you have to give us the name, age, gender, and height of each child. Then we match them with one of our 15 categories and we say, this is the day, this is the time, and this is the place where they will come to get a bike. And
then they come.
And that's basically...
Right. So this organization then alerts the family.
Yes.
Says this day and time is when your bike is going to be available. And the parents or guardians typically come in with the children.
We hope.
Yeah, that's the ideal, right?
Yeah, it doesn't always work that way. And sometimes parents come in without the child, which we don't like that either.
Right.
So,
but you've got a warehouse of thousands of bikes.
Right.
You're just not going to let these kids go willy-nilly
No.
through the warehouse.
Well, we may have done that like in one of our early years. And then,
And once again,
and then you learned.
and we learned, yeah. What we did is we should just purchase these, but we rent about 150 feet of curtain and rod kind of thing. So that separates the mass of bikes from the ones that they get to choose from. So in the 15 categories, we'll put 6 bikes out in front of the curtain in each category. So the kid comes through, they get registered, they get a name tag, they get measured one more time to make sure we have the correct height for them. They get a brand new helmet, gets fitted. Now they get to shop for a bike. But they get to shop from 6 bikes.
From their category.
From their category of 6
Yeah.
bikes. So they get a colored dot that matches with a category on their name tag. Now they get a personal shopper who goes with them through the whole process. And that shopper will take them to the right category. They get to choose one. Then they go, and that bike gets fitted for them. So it's the right size, and the saddle is adjusted right, and all that kind of stuff. We usually partner with Bike Min or some other local organization that's more about education. And we'll have a bike rodeo where they'll teach them how to signal, how make sure they know how to stop.
Bike
and
safety.
start. Bike safety kind of stuff. Yeah, and then we go out and it gets put on their car or in public transportation. And
I think this is part of the magic, that one of the things that you've learned is that the tyranny of choice can just rip us apart.
yes,
Right? And so by limiting that to just 6 bikes,
Yeah.
that's what I have to choose from. Helps really focus that young person's point of view on, okay, now what do I want?
Yeah.
What is it that I want from this small number?
There's
I think
only-
that's just really
there's
cool.
only one error in what you said. You said this young person's. It's usually the parents that are the problem.
Well,
Because the parents will go, well, have you looked at that one? Have you looked at that one? Wait, what's behind the curtain?
Yeah.
You know?
do they ask that?
Oh, sure they do.
Yeah.
Can we go look there?
Those damn parents.
But it is. It's interesting. You're doing the selection component. You're that choice is way too much when it gets to be too big.
Right.
Yeah, it's
Yet
too
you're
much.
giving them a choice. So now it's not this bike that is being given to you and you didn't have any say in it. You actually
Yep.
got to pick and choose. So now you even have more of an ownership
Yep.
component because
Right.
I picked this
Yeah.
bike. This
Yeah.
is my bike.
Yeah, you guys, you're hitting exactly on one of the most important aspects of what we do.
Yeah.
Is these kids do not get to go shopping.
Yeah.
So for them to actually go shopping for a bike, and we call it that, you
Yeah.
get to go shopping for a bike. It's a big deal for them. And, it usually is very simple for them. Almost every kid picks a bike based on color.
How great is that? That's
Yeah.
that's a terrific
Yeah.
a feature to choose on as far as
Yeah.
I'm concerned.
And I want to say sometimes, like when I take a kid shopping, here's a Specialized or a Trek or or a Gary Fisher. And
how meaningful is that to these kids?
no, it doesn't mean anything to them. But
I want the blue one. I want the blue one.
Yeah, and part of me goes, that blue bike is really kind of a piece of garbage. But it doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter for what they're going to be using it for, and,
Right.
and all of that, and that pride that they then instills with
Yep.
them because it's theirs and
Yeah.
they picked it and they like it. It's the same. The same psychology with my kids, right? And,
Yeah.
and you sit there and we just bought skis for my son, and it was, I'm like going, well, what about these? These are the and he's like, he kind of looked at him and going, why? And it was. You could tell it was the color. He was
Yeah, yeah.
He
it
liked the
was
blue ones.
He wanted the green ones. I don't give me those ugly yellow whatever ones. I
Yeah.
wanted the green ones. So fine.
So Terry, we know that you have a background in music and production, and I just find it fascinating because it's pretty rare that we actually get to talk to people who have been in the musical community and in the world of production as you have. So this is.
And you came in and you said, "What about our wonderful studio? It runs hot." Is that I don't even know the terms you guys are using. You guys are talking
It's a little
a
live.
whole
It's live.
different
Yeah.
live because it is my dining room.
I hear echoes.
That's right. That's right. That's right. That's right. So, listeners, all that echo you hear, that's natural to the room.
Right. Yeah. In my studio, I had machines that could create a room exactly this size if I wanted it to sound this way. You could actually.
This is not machine made.
No, this is analog echo.
But you were not writing for a local band. You had a pretty specific. You had a whole career actually built
Right.
around this. So, tell listeners a little bit about what you have been involved in musically.
Well, so yeah, I spent about 25 years writing and producing music mostly for TV commercials, but for radio, I scored documentary films, industrial films, some TV show stuff, some live theater stuff. I had a bank building that I bought and turned it into a recording studio, and it was fun. I mean, the beauty of it was, I studied music. I have a music degree, but I'm not a great musician. But I was never the guy who was going to be performing. As soon as I started doing what I did, I could hire the best musicians in town, or go to LA or go to New York and hire the best musicians and singers there. So I very quickly go, these people are a lot better than me because they actually practice.
Practice
You just
does
had
make
the
a difference.
guitar for the looks.
It was for
right?
chicks, man. Yeah.
It's like, hey.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Which I assume worked. You did tee that up that the bike was good for your therapy, but the guitar was
Good for my love life.
good.
Yeah.
And
Although I'm not sure if my wife is all that fascinated with my guitar anymore. Sorry, Mary.
Yeah, well, you're happily married there.
Yeah.
It served its purpose. There you go.
Right.
so, what do you listen to these days? So, after all these years of being involved in composing and production, especially things that last 30 seconds or less, what do you like to listen to?
Well, I actually do like listening to commercials. Because I find them fascinating, and I'm in some way it's an addiction. I mean the British commercials. You watch some of that stuff. I don't know if you've seen every year they'll come out with the best ones.
Yeah, the awards are always terrific, aren't they?
Yeah, they're just great. I listen to The Current.
Okay.
Which is again
Yeah,
A
I'm
local radio station
Public-
here. Public radio
It's public
station,
radio.
but it is eclectic nature, more alternative, but very. You'll hear Janis Joplin next to
Frank Sinatra
next to
the
Imagine
Wild.
Dragons.
Right.
So.
Yeah. So I find that really interesting, and it's like when I'm driving between meetings or something, I hear something and I grab my phone and go, you got to check this out. So it's a reminder for me.
Well,
But then,
oh, go ahead.
well, I was going to say, but then I go back, because I graduated from high school in 72. So I grew up with Crosby, Stills, Nash, and I just loved that stuff. And I played trumpet in high school and college. So I loved horn bands.
Chicago.
I love Chicago. I love Blood, Sweat, and Tears was one of
yeah.
my favorites because they were a little more of a jazz aspect than Chicago was.
Did you have a preference for the Al Cooper days versus the David Clayton Thomas days? Did you have some?
Well, you know what? I love David Clayton Thomas. I mean, I actually tried to hire him once to sing on something, but
Tried?
yeah. Well, it wasn't always so easy to get. You could. In my business, you could always try to get somebody, but if the cost was prohibitive, you couldn't always get the client to agree to that.
Yeah.
Was David just a little too expensive?
I can't even remember what the specific was with him. But I mean, I got to work with Alice Cooper, and Amy Grant. And,
Wow. Talk about diverse.
Yeah, there's a variety there.
Yeah, and super talented.
Yeah.
I first heard Amy Grant when I was a freshman in college, and I think it was a recording of her in a performance. She was like 19 years old,
or maybe 16.
Maybe 16.
Because her first thing happened when she was 16.
Just a tremendous talent.
Yeah.
She riffed on one song idea saying, well, what if I played this in a classical mode? And then she does this kind of Baroque-like thing on the piano and sings something.
Yeah,
and then she
I've
said,
heard that.
and then what if I did it in a rock and roll mode? And then she riffs this heavy, and it's the same song. And I was in music school.
Yeah.
And I was like,
Right.
I shouldn't be here. I was like, wow.
Can I tell you a story about my recording session with Amy?
Yeah.
So this was, I was doing a Target Christmas campaign. I don't remember what year it was, maybe early 90s, I think. So every year for a while there, Target would secure some celebrity to be their person for their Christmas campaign. So she was the one that year. So I recorded the music for this stuff in my studio here, and then I went down to Nashville to put her vocals on it. So I'm in there, and the contract said she had to have her own engineer, her own manager, her own agent. It was like, so I'm sitting at the console with the engineer. I'm with the talkback. She's in the studio. And her entourage is in the back of the room sitting on couches.
Basically boring holes into the back of your head?
Well, not at first. So we're doing this thing, and whenever you would do a Target campaign, you'd have to do a 5-second stinger, a 10, a 15, a 30, a 60, and a full-length song.
And these are things that she's singing or just talking? Is it just voiceover?
No, she's singing.
Yeah, okay.
No, it was a song I wrote for her to sing.
So she had a track to sing to.
Oh, yeah. And a pretty damn good track, if you ask me. So she's there, and Amy is not. I will say she's not a lickmeister. So she's not the kind of person she's not like Christina Aguilera, who can do all these wicked turns and stuff. And that wasn't really a thing back then as much, but she wasn't very good at that. And I had a few things that I'd written for her to do. And she was just, she was struggling with it a little bit. She wasn't getting it nailed in. And her agent was sitting in the back of the room, and after a take, he'd stand up and he'd come over and he'd put his hands on my shoulders and he'd say, "That's pretty good, don't you think?" And I go, "Well," and this was before auto-tune, which fixes pitch discrepancies in singers, for those of you who aren't into that. So that hadn't been invented yet. So singers actually had to sing in tune.
Way back when.
Yeah.
Figure.
Because if it wasn't in tune, it wasn't in tune. There was nothing you could do about it.
You're not going to be able to mix that later and fix it.
No, you can't you couldn't fix that in the mix back then. You can now. But I looked at him, I go, "Well, I'm the producer on this. This is my reputation. Target hired me to deliver something I think is a quality product." So this went on for probably 40 minutes, and he would keep getting up and putting his hands on my shoulder and saying, "That was pretty good. That was good enough, don't you think?" And I would say, "No, I don't think so." And Amy couldn't hear any of this, but she's watching it because she's on the other side of the glass. So finally, she takes her headphones off, puts them on the music stand, opens the door, comes into the control room. She steps between me and I won't mention his name. And she looked at me and she goes, I'm not leaving here till I've given you exactly what you want on this." And she turned and she looked at her agent, didn't say a word to him, and he went and sat down. He never said a word the rest of the time.
He never came back up.
And I'm just going, wow.
That's a pro move.
That's integrity.
Yeah.
Because she goes, "I know that you have a reputation that you have to uphold." And she knew when her pitch wasn't perfect. So it's like she didn't want that to go out either.
Yeah. But
her agent just, I don't know. So
just wanted the session to be done as quickly as possible.
Yeah.
Get the paycheck and go.
So, and let me tell you, I've worked with a lot of local singers and singers in other cities who were not stars, who were like, "That was good enough,"
Yeah.
And so when you get somebody who actually is a pro and says that wasn't good enough, I respect that a lot.
I think that says it says a lot about the person, but also, as you said, those people who settle for good enough, they're local. They're not the immigrants. They're not the ones that you hear those stories about the singers or the musicians that are always looking to make sure that it's perfect. In the Rolling Stones, it's Keith Richards. He is the guy that just kept, we have to retake this. We have to retake this. We have to do this. We got to get it. We got to nail it exactly. And Mick Jagger was the business side of things, but he wasn't, on that. It wasn't there. And, and you hear that on these components. And I think there's something to that of, again, it goes back to, like you said, the practice component, but it's that practice with intention and really trying to strive for that perfection or as close to it as you can get.
Yeah. And it's not always musical perfection. It's feel perfection. Yeah. Because in music, I actually prefer singers who don't sing perfectly. In fact, I would even pay somebody in LA to go find singers for me, because I wanted singers that had unique character to their voice, especially, in any kind of music, but especially in advertising. How do you create something that stands out?
Yeah.
Because the whole thing of, differentiate or die.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've read that book. But in music, there's a lot of competition. There's a lot of noise out there. How do you stand out? Well, and in advertising, you really need to do that, or people switch channels.
And in what I find fascinating in this conversation is you're talking about the soundtrack behind what is probably the main focus of most of these commercials. Maybe not all of them, right? But but it is an important aspect, and it sets. We'll go back into priming, right? Because you are priming different components of how people then interpret everything else. And so if you don't set the right mood, the right tone, frame it up with that intro, right? I mean, because that's usually the first thing you hear is there's a musical component that comes in. That sets that tone. And so there's a whole component around there. I was just in New York, and I talked to Tim about this. I just came back, and there was a program I did that was called the Taste of Music. And we were in this high fidelity listening studio, listening room, right? Not this. It was $115,000 speakers in front of us. There's just these pieces of art for the speakers and the turntable and everything else.
They call that speaker porn.
Yeah. It was. I'm not that guy, and I was salivating. So
I'm jealous.
But we had glasses of wine and some food, and you would take a sip of the wine, and taste it. And then they'd play a piece of music, and then you taste the wine again, and it changed the taste of the wine. I'm not the wine guy. I'm not the guy that can go, take and swirl it around and go, oh, there's a bit of, apricot and it smells all right. It smells fruity. Okay, and then I taste it. Yeah, it tastes kind of fruity. I don't know. I can tell tannins and not tannins, but I'm not that big a guy. I could tell the difference. And then they played a different piece, and it again changed that taste of that wine. Yeah. Differently. And so music has a component that I think is much more intensive than we realize in how we not only taste things, but how we interpret things, how we view a commercial can make or break, again, movies, soundtracks, everything, all of that.
This was kind of Dan Levitin's thesis, right? In This Is Your Brain on Music.
Yeah.
How all this stuff that's happening in our brains that doesn't occur without music and occurs differently because of different types of music.
Yeah.
Even as simple as why a minor chord makes us feel a little sadder than a major chord.
Yeah. Always frustrated me a little bit, but...
Oh, how so?
Well, because not a lot of people in advertising want something in a minor key. I felt a little limited that...
Always having to write in major keys.
Yeah, right. It's like, come on, more up, Terry. And I go... This is more fun. But you're right. Music has power that we don't even really understand. And we can't put words to it, but it impacts so much of what we do in life. I mean, I have 3 daughters, and we just did a thing with our family where, write down 5 things that you love. And this has nothing to do with anybody else. Just 5 things that you love.
Right.
Every one of them put down music.
Yeah.
You know, they don't all like the same kind of music necessarily, but music speaks to them in ways, and it's a mood enhancer, a mood changer. It has so much power.
Yeah.
You know, and that's why in some ways, yeah, I felt a little bad maybe that I was manipulating people with music to make them buy things, but it was fun.
Let's say influence.
Yeah,
We don't have to use
Right.
manipulate is a little heavy-handed. But
Yeah.
Influence.
Yeah.
Although that's what the ad agencies were asking me to do. The heavy-handedness was not something they were concerned about, as long as that the consumer didn't know we were being heavy-handed.
Yeah. Well, we've interviewed a couple agency people, and I think they're trying to say influence now. At least in the podcast with us. Maybe not. Maybe not the people that they're hiring to actually do. We got to get them to do this.
Yeah, right.
So, all right.
Well, with that, Terry, on that note, boom, chick. Thank you for joining us in the Behavioral Group Studios today.
This has been really fun, guys.
Thank you.
Yeah, I love this.
Welcome to our grooving session, where Tim and I groove on what we learned from our behavioral group's interview, have a free-flowing discussion on some of those topics, and whatever else comes into our bicycle helmeted heads.
Thank goodness we're being safe.
We are.
We're being safe riders today.
Such safe people.
I love that.
How safe are we?
We're safe enough to talk about choice architecture today.
All right. And choice architecture being from what component that we are talking?
Coming from Terry's brilliant move to only show 6 bikes that are height and category appropriate.
Yeah, I thought that was really great.
Yep.
What else are we going to talk about?
Let's also talk about this volunteer registration system, vetting the system.
I love that. And just the components of how that applies some behavioral principles that probably were unintended, but really very powerful.
Or just perfecto, yeah. And what else, Kurt?
Well, I think the last thing is just how they don't turn away any bikes. And
right.
what that means, again, from a behavioral psychology kind of perspective. So we'll groove on that.
Sounds good. Okay.
All right.
Let's get started.
You go.
All right.
Or should I go?
Obviously, this is so well scripted. I'm sure that our listeners are going, wow, this is just so driven.
So we don't script the grooving session.
I
So
know.
for everybody that's out there listening, actually, we don't script our interviews. We don't script our grooving session. We're not even scripting our intros anymore.
No. So we talked about this brilliant move to take from the thousands of bikes that are available to have a big curtain and rod so that only 6 are shown that are height and category appropriate. And my first read was to go back to, the Paradox of Choice, Barry Schwartz.
Exactly.
And then my favorite is Sheena Iyengar's book called The Art of Choosing.
Which, tell the story, again, many of our listeners have probably heard this, but it's about jelly. I mean, one of the famous research was on jelly.
Yeah, so when Sheena was at Stanford getting her PhD, she went to a grocery store in Palo Alto and set up 2 different tasting stands. And on certain days, customers would walk in and see a tasting stand that had 6 flavors of jelly on the tasting stand. And on other days, they would walk in and see 24 flavors of jelly on the tasting stand. And they gave everyone a coupon as they came in the door. And what Sheena was measuring and her co-authors were measuring were how many people stopped to taste of everyone that comes in the door.
Step number 1.
Step number 1. In other words, does it attract attention? And then the second was how much jelly got sold.
Step number 2.
Ultimately, which is what every manufacturer of jelly wants to know. How can I sell more jelly? And so what she found is that the station with 24 flavors attracted a lot more people.
A lot of people went and tasted jellies.
They were really into it, way more than the people who were exposed only to 6 flavors.
Hey, that flavor I wanted, purple, raspberry bee jam, was not on there.
However, However, the amount of jelly sold was 3 times greater in the lesser choice option.
3 times greater.
3 times greater in raw numbers, not
number of jars.
Yeah, not percentage, but actual number of jars. They sold a lot more jelly. And so Sheena Iyengar talks about the tyranny of choice in this beautiful way that says, giving people what we ask for. We always ask for more and more choice. Give me everything. Show me all the options. It's not good for us. It doesn't help us decide.
And that's what Terry did, again, accidentally, but from this perspective of saying, we're not going to show these kids 1,000 bikes that they get to run around and choose from. A, it'd be a madhouse from a logistics perspective, but B...
And the parents would drive them crazy.
The parents would drive them crazy. But B, it actually impedes those kids from actually selecting the bike that is probably best for them. And so by limiting their choice, he has done this amazing facet of this.
Companies need to think about this when they're in their web design and they're deciding how many products to show on every screen. They need to think about how people are going to make decisions about this.
Yeah, I think it's a great thing in all of our lives, just on personal side too. You know what? Sometimes you don't have to have 20 different choices, right? You're picking out vacation places where you want to go. You know, sometimes it's easier to just say, hey, let's have 4 choices and we'll pick from those 4. Let's not keep searching after we do that.
Because it just becomes bad. Yeah.
Just becomes bad.
Yeah, just bad.
Yeah. It's like a U2 song.
So let's talk about...
I meant U2 as in the song bad, not that U2 songs are bad. I actually like U2. So just making sure people clearly understand they have a song bad. There we go.
Was U2 formed before 1978?
They were probably formed right around that time.
Right around that time.
So yeah, I'm
just
not
curious.
sure exactly when, but they were the epitome of an 80s band.
So let's talk about the really great behavioral science work that Terry is doing in the volunteer application process. That, again, he is the accidental behavioral scientist. So he's completely unaware of the psychology behind it, the science behind it, but he totally kicks ass on this.
This was, I thought, was one of the most amazing pieces. And so if you have any type of component where you're designing how to tier people or triage people in a volunteer or maybe even in other, work kind of things, this was great. For the volunteer registration, have you ever changed a bike tire? No. Congratulations. You are a cleaner. So I won something because I don't know how to change a bike tire. Now I'm pumped. It's not like, oh, you've never changed a bike tire? Well, I guess we'll let you clean a bike. You know?
Yeah. Well, you're unfortunately not going to qualify for our engineering program, so we aren't going to be able to do anything meaningful, and we'll put you over there in the corner.
You're not gonna. You don't have enough to be a prepper, right? So don't show them the next level. Don't show them. And that was great. I mean, you think about the component of how that's framed.
Framing, yes.
He has framed that conversation now in that real easy to use web sign up registration. So you're not doing a lot of work. So it's EAST at its best, right? Easy, attractive. I'm going to spell it right this time. Social, right? When you start and doing your element, and then timely, right? You're
happening up at that moment.
Yeah, you're signing up. So I thought that was great.
That is pretty tricky. That's pretty terrific. Yeah, agreed. Okay, and then the last thing we wanted to talk about was this wonderful aspect of the donors being treated with. Terry was just talking about it as respect, right? No donor is turned away. No bike is turned away. But there is an important behavioral science aspect to this, isn't there?
You could bring in the rust bucket, junky, crappiest bike ever, right? Probably what I rode for, many, many years. And they're going to say, oh, thank you for this bike. And, thank you for your donation. Nothing gets like, oh, we can't take that. It's just, it doesn't fit. Like when you go into some of those clothing restores, right? And they're like, you're trying to volunteer and bring in your old, and they're going, yeah, those jeans have a hole in them and we're not going to take those. Or, oh yeah, we have too many socks and you can't, use those right now. And so you go and you got to take them back and you're going, oh, my stuff isn't good enough for others, right?
Right. And that's not consistent with the self-image that you have as a donor.
Right. So it's a self-image of I'm a donor, but also that, this is something I obviously valued it enough to bring it in, that
Right.
I felt that there was some worth in this piece. And so you're saying your judgment is still intact. You did not misjudge this. It's not like, oh yeah, I took those genes in, or the best is trying to well, this is a whole different thing, but trying to sell back books to the used bookstores, right?
What, is this an endowment effect? Like, my books are worth way more than that.
Well, my books are like there, but they won't even take my books. Come on. It's like, oh God, no, not another one of those. Either it's too many of them, or it's just nobody reads those, or whatever it would be.
I totally felt both loss aversion and endowment effect when I I moved out of a big house and had 1,000 books that I was trying to get rid of. And I had some that I thought were worth something, took them to some really kind of cool, vintage, used bookstores. Yeah, we'll give you $25 for this one. Oh my God, are you kidding? That's a valuable book. It's been sitting on my shelf for 20 years. No, it's $20.
Yeah, that's how it works. So
That's how it works.
So, Tim, I have a musical question for you.
Oh, really?
Yes.
God, okay, I don't know.
So we talked with Terry about my experience at the Taste of Music in New York.
Yeah.
Have you ever tasted music?
So that's a good question. I don't know if I have. I'm not sure if I'm aware of food tasting differently depending on the kind of music that I was listening to at the time.
But now you haven't ever done an experiment on
I
this.
haven't.
You have not had a glass of wine in your hand and played, some Bach and then switched it over to some folk or switched it over to some Bob Dylan and see if that changes, right?
I haven't. But I do know the difference that environment does make a difference on music.
All right. Now explain that.
So from night to night, I'll play in different places and I'll play the same song, and playing it, it's coming from me. I know it a particular way, and there might be some modest amount of variation, but it feels very different playing it in bar number 1 versus bar number 2 versus listening room number 3. Those are all very different experiences for me as an artist to play those songs.
Is it the structural environment, or is it the social environment? Is it the people that are there, or is it because the room itself is designed different, or is it some combination?
It's both.
Okay.
And it's certainly all of that. Whether or not there's alcohol being sold, whether people are talking, whether it's a listening spot where it's supposed to be quiet, all those things influence it. But the actual experience of the song is different in every one of those situations.
Is it different in the same venue, maybe on different nights with different audiences?
Yes, an audience does. I know that we've talked about this in the past, and I've not played up the value of the audience, but the audience absolutely has an impact on the ultimate experience.
So again, translating that into non-musical components, which I like to do.
Corporations should invest more in their product development. No, that's probably not where you were going.
Sure, that's a good translation. No, where I wanted to go with that is just understanding how context matters in these situations. And so not only in the user experience and the end component of what gets bought, what gets consumed, but in this element of saying, hey, when we're testing something, when we're doing our research on this, we have to make sure that we aren't having unintended components factoring in the location, the music that's playing in the background. So if people are doing, hey, if we're having a consumer taste test of a certain wine, and we have certain music in the background,
it's going to influence things.
That could potentially influence that. The wine could be a fantastic wine, but paired with that music, paired in that environment, it would have a negative connotation. And so we don't think about that. We just, and again, how many times do companies do product testing in labs, in non-real world situations? So that is going to be an entirely different experience for people than having that that experience in, a living room or in a restaurant or wherever it is.
Definitely.
So
the way that we consume an ad on the television or over the radio is influenced by the music that's playing.
Oh, yeah.
Through that ad.
And Terry talked about that.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, that was a lot of what he did.
Yeah.
So, all right.
Okay.
So let's do a quick recap.
Okay, so we talked a little bit about how choice architecture as a behavioral science tool plays into Terry's model of, his accidental behavioral scientist model of only selecting 6 bikes for each child based on height and category.
Right.
So the big payoff there is using choice architecture makes it easier for the people to choose and makes it better for the people who are actually doing the choosing. They're more satisfied.
And we talked about his volunteer experience and, again, how that gets framed very positively, leaving those people with this great idea of, hey, I'm a cleaner, because congratulations, there you go.
You won a prize.
Yeah. And
lastly, we talked about how donors benefit from both the consistency of self-image when they're donating their bike, and then that breeds into all kinds of social benefits of, hey, I'm a donor. I gave my bike away, and you should do the same. You've probably got an old bike.
And they're going to go out and talk about it, and they're going to
in
probably
a positive
come back
way
next year and donate another piece of crap bike. But hey, it's all good.
It's all possible.
So listeners, thank you for hanging in with us. And again, if you liked this episode, please, we beg you. I don't know if we beg.
No, we should beg, because it really makes a difference in the ratings. It actually influences how many people get to see Behavioral Grooves as a referral based on the kind of reviews that we get. So It does make a difference.
And we do. I mean, our purpose is still to build this community and to expand people who can gain some insight into how behavioral science can make their lives better or their work better. So please leave us a review and give us a 5-star rating if you think we deserve it. And with that, thank you.